Welcome to the Armani Talks YouTube channel, the #1 YouTube channel for you to level up your communication skills, learn the art of public speaking, social skills, and personal branding to take your message to the world. If you're new to this channel, do not forget to hit subscribe right on below for 3 weekly videos on how to become more confident with words. For today's episode, we are going to be talking about how to build skills. So in the information age, you would think that we have more doers, action takers, and value creators than ever, right? Wrong. In today's world, the biggest problem is that we have too much information. And with all this information, what happens is that a lot of people go in with the intent to produce, but they come out with analysis paralysis. They have too many options. And when you have too many options and you're not taking enough action, you have a lot of potential energy, but very little kinetic energy. You're not producing value for anyone. That's unfortunate, but I have a solution. Simplicity. Simplicity is always the solution. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving you 2 practical tips on how you can build your skills. 2 approaches which are very easy to understand conceptually and hopefully very easy to apply. The first approach is going to be called the machine gun approach, and the second one is the bow and arrow approach. By using these 2 frameworks, what's going to happen is that you can get all this knowledge and you can use it to build skills. This channel is all about communication skills, so you can apply these 2 strategies to level up your ability to communicate. But here's the kicker. You can apply this for any kind of skill out there that you are willing to learn. All you need is consistency, patience, and grit. So if you're ready to rock, make sure you drop a like for me right on below, and let's begin. The first is strategy, the machine gun approach. So I want you to picture this. Imagine that you are in a very foggy area and you have a machine gun, right? And I tell you, yo, hit the target. You're going to be like, Armani, I can't see anything. What am I supposed to hit? And I tell you again, hit the target. So what do? You just start firing off all these bullets, right? Eventually, the fog disappears and you see that a lot of bullets are on the ground, but a few bullets hit the target. This right here is the machine gun approach. This strategy is all about volume in the beginning stages. And from that volume, what's going to happen is that you start noticing patterns. And from those patterns, what's going to happen is you are going to get closer and closer to your target. That's the first approach. The second one is known as the bow and arrow strategy. This is where I tell you exactly where your target is. Yo, you see that target? Yeah, I see it. Hit it. So you get the bow and arrow, you fire away, and you hit the target. And I tell you, do it again. So you do it again. And I tell you, do it again. And you do it again. For this strategy, it's more about the quality. You are completely aware where your target is. It's just a matter of repeating the same move over and over again. As you can tell, these 2 approaches are very, very different. For the first strategy, it's more so a ready, fire, aim approach. And for the second strategy, it's more of a ready, fire, aim approach. Question: when do you know how to use either strategy? Great question right there. And I want to answer that question in context to my life. So June 2018, last year, I decided that I wanted to start Armani Talks. But there was a problem. What the hell was Armani going to talk about? I knew that I wanted to talk about public speaking, but what else? What else was I going to say? And around that time, I didn't know much about personal branding. I didn't know the kind of questions that I was supposed to ask, the people that I was supposed to network with. So you know what I did? I started firing the bullets away, aka tweets. I would write hundreds and hundreds of tweets every single day. And each tweet that I wrote brought me closer and closer to my target about what I wanted to talk about. Eventually, the fog cleared and I noticed 3 targets staring back at me in my face. I saw public speaking being one of the targets, the other one being personal branding, and the other one being social skills. 3 targets which all deal with communication. And that's what the Armani Talks brand is all about. For this strategy, I went more the machine gun approach because I didn't have an idea of what I was going to do. So I just began, I started off with the volume, and I was able to peel back and get the quality from there. But let's use another example now. What's a good example of bow and arrow? 2 years ago, I wanted to learn how to play the ukulele. And once I got the ukulele, there was a song that I wanted to learn. I forgot the name of the song, but I could just hear it over and over again. So I go on YouTube, and luckily, someone already made a tutorial of how to play that song. So in a situation like this, rather than completely reinventing the wheel, I was able to see what my target was, and I was able to repeat that movement over and over again until I was able to play the song. If you couldn't tell, the machine gun approach is more about turning the complexity into simplicity, and the bow and arrow approach is more about turning the simplicity into complexity. What does this mean? Well, in the machine gun example, where I was trying to start my personal brand, I was very confused in the beginning stages. I had no clue about what I wanted to do. So everything was very complex. But with this strategy, it's all about just hustling and putting in your reps over and over again. And eventually, you start to see what doesn't work. You eliminate what doesn't work, and then you'll have the simplicity staring right back at you. I often hear a lot of people, especially business owners, saying, well, there's only 2 to 3 levers that you need to push. But here's the thing. In order to discover those 2 to 3 levers, those 3 high ROI tasks, you're going to have to go through a lot of junk, a lot of work to find those levers. So that's the case of turning the complexity into simplicity. Now with the bow and arrow approach, it's the exact opposite. It's about turning the simplicity into complexity. When I was learning how to play the ukulele, I was literally just taking it 1 string at a time. I remember I was watching those YouTube videos on 0.25 the speed, just so I could get each strum perfect over and over again. Here's the beauty though. Getting each of those strum patterns perfect allows my neural pathways to form correctly. And eventually, once the neural pathways solidify, speed will be a byproduct. So those simple strums turn into a song. Simplicity to complexity. Now you may be still wondering, Armani, can I ever switch? Say I began with the machine gun strategy, can I ever switch to bow and arrow? Or say I began with bow and arrow, can I ever switch to machine gun? Absolutely. Because you have to realize this, when you are building skills, it's more so about strategy. So back to the personal branding example. Yes, I started off with the machine gun, but after a year to a year and a half of nonstop work, I saw the patterns that were sticking out. And I mentioned that it was public speaking, social skills, and personal branding. And from there, I was able to see more patterns which stuck out to a point where I was able to discover the fundamentals. Once I discovered the fundamentals, I decided to adopt more of a bow and arrow approach. Keep repeating the fundamentals over and over again. I'm at that stage of Armani Talks where I'm sharpening the blade. But let's flip it. Let's say you, in your world, you want to learn how to cook, right? You want to learn how to cook. So in the initial stages, you are going to have the bow and arrow strategy. You see the recipe and you just keep executing each of the steps over and over again so you can cook that recipe. Rinse and repeat over and over again. Eventually, what's going to happen is that you have so much data of how to cook different dishes that this time you want to experiment. You want to create your own dish. So what are you going to do? You are going to switch your paradigm into machine gun. You're going to experiment with all these different dishes. A lot of different dishes will be a flop, but eventually you are going to stumble onto a winner. You are going to create something completely from your imagination. So ultimately, it comes down to being strategic and knowing when to switch. But before knowing when to switch, you have to understand the context that you are operating in. If you see that there's no resources out there for what you're searching for, or let's say you're such a beginner, you don't even know the right questions to ask, then you're probably going to have to choose machine gun. You don't have any other choice. But if you see that there's a framework already laid out for you, then perfect that framework. Let's use that as in an example of setting up your website. If you want to set up your website, there's a lot of different procedures on how you can do that. Step-by-step action plan, which has been laid out. So for that section, you can do the bow and arrow strategy. But say you want to start creating that website for your blog. Well, in situations like that, you can read all the blogs in the world, but ultimately, the only way that you become a better blogger is by blogging. So you are going to have to put out a lot of volume until you start realizing, I'm starting to develop my writing voice. Ultimately, it comes down to strategy, awareness, and the ability to adapt. But you have it now. You have two frameworks that you can always alternate between whenever shit is hitting the fan. Because there's nothing worse than just moving around in circles and not going anywhere. So you have to be able to tame your ego as you are perfecting these skills. At the end of the day, skills will pay the bills, but more importantly, skills are a staple of your confidence. It's very hard to be confident if you have nothing to be confident about. So do something about it. The beauty about skills is that it automatically sets you up for lifelong growth. The more that you learn, the more that you realize you have more to learn. Just keep doing it over and over again. Adapt when you need to adapt and fine tune. When you feel as though things are getting too easy, shake it up with the machine gun approach. And when you feel as though you are noticing patterns, lock into it with the bow and arrow approach. Ultimately, it is going to come down to you. So make sure you're having fun with this entire process. Learning skills feels like a lot of work at first, but eventually it becomes more of an art. So keep on practicing, keep on honing your craft, and keep on sharpening your blade. Soon enough, your simplicity, your complexity will produce something amazing. If today's episode helped you, make sure you drop a like right down below and you share this video on your social media of choice so others can learn how to turn the potential energy into kinetic energy and build their skills. Thank you for joining the Armani Talks YouTube channel, and I'll catch you on the next episode.